The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like any other day. Park Min-ho stood on the observation deck of the administration building, watching farmers tend to their crops in the valley below. The golden wheat fields stretched for miles under the blue sky of Kepler 442b. This world had been their home for 50 years now, a peaceful place far from the wars and politics of the galaxy. Min-ho sipped his coffee and checked the daily reports. Everything looked normal. The harvest would be good this year. The children were healthy. Trade ships would arrive next month to collect their grain. Life was simple here, just the way the colonists liked it. That peace shattered at exactly 10:47. Local time. The first explosions lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. Min-ho dropped his coffee mug as the building shook. Through the window he saw ships descending from the clouds. They were black and angular, nothing like the friendly trade vessels that usually visited. "Sir," Kim Ji-woo burst into his office. The young communications officer looked pale and frightened. "We're under attack. Unknown ships just destroyed our orbital defense platforms." More explosions thundered across the colony. The attacking ships fired red beams that turned buildings into smoking craters. People ran screaming through the streets below. Min-ho watched a family dive for cover as a beam struck their home. "Who are they?" Min-ho asked, though his heart already knew this was bad. "Vorthak Empire ships, sir. They didn't respond to our hails. They just started shooting." Ji-woo's hands shook as she held her communication device. "The council station is trying to reach us, but the attackers are jamming most frequencies. The Vorthak Empire." Min-ho had heard stories about them. They conquered worlds and enslaved entire populations. What did they want with a simple farming colony? Another explosion rocked the building. Through the window, Min-ho saw one of the black ships landing in the town square. Soldiers in dark armor poured out. They carried weapons that glowed with evil red light. The colonists tried to run, but the soldiers shot them down without mercy. "We need to evacuate," Min-ho said. "Send out the emergency signal. Tell everyone to head for the caves in the northern mountains." Ji-woo nodded and ran to her console. Her fingers flew over the controls as she broadcast the evacuation order. But even as she worked, more enemy ships landed around the colony. They were surrounding New Haven, cutting off escape routes. "Sir, I'm getting reports from the other settlements," Ji-woo said. "They're hitting everyone at once. The mining station, the research outpost, even the small farms. This isn't a raid. They want the whole planet." Min-ho felt cold fear in his stomach. The Vorthak didn't just conquer worlds. They wiped out the local populations and replaced them with their own people. Every man, woman, and child on Kepler 442b was marked for death. "Can we contact the Galactic Council?" he asked. "I'm trying, but the jamming is too strong." "Wait." Ji-woo's eyes lit up with hope. "I'm getting through on the emergency frequency. It's weak, but I can send a message." "Do it. Tell them we need help immediately." Ji-woo began typing the distress signal. Her message was simple and desperate. "This is New Haven Colony on Kepler 442b. We are under attack by Vorthak Empire forces. They are killing civilians. We have no military defense. Please send help immediately. We have children here. Please, help us." She hit the send button just as another explosion shook the building. Sparks flew from her console as the main communication array took a direct hit. "Did it go through?" Min-ho asked. "I think so. The signal went out on all frequencies. Before they hit us." Ji-woo looked at her broken equipment with tears in her eyes. "But sir, even if the council gets the message, their nearest fleet is weeks away." Through the window they could see Vorthak soldiers moving through the streets. They were setting up some kind of equipment. Min-ho recognized it from news reports, population scanners. The aliens were counting how many humans lived here so they could make sure they killed them all. "We need to get to the emergency bunker," Min-ho said. "Gather any other staff you can find." They ran through the corridors of the administration building. Other workers joined them, accountants, technicians, maintenance staff. None of them were soldiers. They were just ordinary people who had come to this world for a peaceful life. The bunker was deep underground, built into the bedrock during the colony's early days. It had food and water for a month plus basic medical supplies. The colonists had hoped they would never need it. As they sealed the heavy door behind them, they could hear the sounds of battle above. The Vorthak soldiers were searching every building, killing anyone they found. Occasionally the colonists fought back with hunting rifles and farm tools, but they stood no chance against military weapons. How many people made it to the northern caves? Minho asked. Maybe half, replied one of the technicians. The families with children had the best chance. They left first when they heard the evacuation signal. That was something, at least. If some of the colonists could hide in the mountain caves, they might survive until help arrived. The caves were deep and hard to find. The Vorthak might not. Search them thoroughly. But Minho knew the truth that he didn't want to say out loud. Help was weeks away. The Vorthak would have plenty of time to hunt down every last human on the planet. Hours passed in the bunker. The sounds of fighting grew quieter as the aliens finished their work in the town. Through their underground sensors, they could detect heavy machinery moving above. The Vorthak were setting up a permanent base. Sir, Jiwoo whispered. I'm picking up something on the emergency radio. It's very faint. She adjusted the controls on their small backup radio. Static filled the air, mixed with distant voices. Council forces responding to New Haven distress call. Estimated arrival time 21 days. Hold position and await rescue. 21 days. Minho closed his eyes. They had food for maybe 30 days if they were careful, but the Vorthak would find them long before then. The radio crackled again with another voice, different from the first. This signal was much weaker, coming from deep space. Message received, coordinates confirmed, en route. The transmission cut off, leaving only static. Jiwoo tried to tune it back in, but the signal was gone. Who was that? Minho asked. I don't know, sir. The signal came from outside council space, from the quarantine zones. Minho frowned. Nothing lived in the quarantine zones. Those areas of space had been sealed off for centuries, marked as too dangerous for any civilization to enter. Above them, the sounds of alien machinery continued through the night. The Vorthak were here to stay, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something had heard their desperate cry for help. The space station drifted silent and dark against the stars. Prometheus Rest had been abandoned for decades, its metal hull scarred by micrometeorites and time. Once, it had been humanity's first step into the galaxy. Now it was just another piece of space junk floating at the edge of the Sol system. Captain Lee Dongwoo guided his salvage ship closer to the derelict station. The UES Retribution was small compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts that ruled the galaxy now, but she was fast and well-armed. More importantly, she was one of the last active human military vessels. Anything useful on the scans? Dongwoo asked his engineer. Choi Somin looked up from her console. Some rare metals in the superstructure. The old fusion core might be salvageable, too. Nothing amazing, but it'll pay for fuel and supplies. Dongwoo nodded. This was their life now, picking through the bones of humanity's past glory. It wasn't heroic work, but it kept them flying when the rest of their species had given up on the stars. Captain, called Yoon Tae-ho from the weapons station. I'm getting something on the emergency frequencies. Looks like a distress call. That was unusual. Most ships avoided this part of space. The Sol system was marked as a quarantine zone on every galactic chart. Other species were forbidden to enter, and humans were forbidden to leave. Put it through, Dongwoo ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was young and female, crackling with static and fear. This is New Haven Colony on Kepler 442b. We are under attack by Vorthak Empire forces. They are killing civilians. We have no military defense. Please send help immediately. We have children here. Please help us. The bridge fell silent. Dongwoo felt something cold twist in his stomach. The Vorthak Empire. He knew that name from the history files. They were one of the species that had demanded humanity's isolation after the Terran War. How old is this signal? He asked. Broadcast 14 hours ago, Tae-ho replied. It's been bouncing around the communication networks. The Galactic Council received it too. And what's their response? Han Na-young, their medical officer, pulled up the council database on her screen. Nearest council fleet is 21 days out. They're sending a message telling the colonists to hide and wait for rescue. 21 days. Dongwu had seen Vorthak tactics before. They didn't leave survivors when they wanted a planet. Those colonists would be dead long before help arrived. "Sir," Salmon said quietly, "those are human civilians. Earth colonists who left before the isolation order." Dongwu stared at the tactical display. Kepler 442b was 3 days away at maximum burn. They could get there in time to make a difference. But doing so would break every treaty that kept humanity safe from galactic retaliation. "Captain," another voice came from the communication station. Intelligence Officer Young Minseo had been listening to alien chatter across multiple frequencies. "You need to hear this." She played a recording in the harsh language of the Vorthak Empire. Dongwu's translation software converted it to words he could understand. "Nexus Prime Korthak to all ground forces. Complete planetary sterilization authorized. No witnesses. No survivors. Make this world an example to others who resist the Empire." The bridge fell silent again. Dongwu felt old anger stirring in his chest. The same anger that had driven humanity to fight when the galaxy tried to enslave them. The anger that had made other species so afraid they begged Earth to stay away from galactic affairs. "Captain," Nayung said softly, "the isolation protocols are clear. We cannot interfere in galactic conflicts. If we break quarantine, every species in the galaxy will unite against Earth." She was right. The isolation wasn't a punishment. It was protection. After the Terran War, when human tactics had terrified even their allies, the galaxy had made a deal. Humanity would stay in the Sol system, and in return other species would leave Earth alone. "Sir," Taiho spoke up, "I've been analyzing the Vorthak fleet composition. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 assault carriers, ground support units. They're not expecting resistance." Dongwu looked around at his crew. These 5 people were among the last humans to serve in active military duty. The rest of their species had chosen peaceful isolation over the stars. But these few had volunteered to stay out here, maintaining the old ships, keeping the old skills alive just in case. "Summon, how long would it take to bring all systems online?" he asked. The engineer's eyes widened. "Sir, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "Answer the question. Full military configuration? 6 hours if we push it." "But Captain, the Retribution hasn't seen real combat in decades. Some of those weapon systems are older than I am. But they still work?" "Oh yes, sir. Human engineering doesn't break easy." Dongwu stood up and walked to the main display. The image showed Kepler 442b hanging in space, a blue-green world, much like Earth. Somewhere on that planet, human children were hiding in caves while alien soldiers hunted them. "Minseo, pull up everything we have on Vorthak military doctrine. I want to know how they think, how they fight, what scares them." "Captain," Nayung said urgently, "if we do this, there's no going back. The moment we fire on Vorthak ships, we're at war again." "Maybe," Dongwu replied. "Or maybe we remind the galaxy why they wanted us to stay away in the first place." He turned to face his crew. "I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to take a shuttle back to Earth, speak now." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "All right then," Dongwu said. "Soman, start bringing the weapon systems online. Taiho, plot a course for Kepler 442b, maximum burn. Minseo, I want to know everything about that Vorthak fleet. Ship types, commander, profiles, tactical weaknesses, and the isolation protocols?" Nayung asked. Dongwu smiled, and for a moment he looked like the young officer who had fought in the Terran War. "Those protocols exist to protect the galaxy from us, not the other way around." As the Retribution's engines came online for the first time in years, ancient weapon systems began to hum with power. Deep in the ship's memory banks, tactical databases flickered to life. Battle protocols that had been dormant for decades started running diagnostic checks. The ship had been built for one purpose: to win wars that couldn't be won, to find victory where others saw only defeat, to remind the galaxy why humanity had earned its fearsome reputation. Now, 3 days away, children were dying on a world that had once been part of the human colonial empire. The Vorthak thought they were dealing with helpless farmers. They were about to learn otherwise. As the retribution accelerated toward the hyperspace jump point, Dongwu sent one final message on the emergency frequencies. It was brief and simple, the kind of message that had once struck fear into alien hearts across the galaxy. New Haven Colony, this is Captain Lee Dongwu of the UES Retribution. We received your distress call. Help is coming. Hold on. The Retribution raced through hyperspace like a bullet fired from the past. In the 3 days since leaving Prometheus's rest, the ship had transformed from a salvage vessel into something much more dangerous. Captain Lee Dongwu walked through corridors that now hummed with deadly purpose. Status report, he called as he entered the bridge. All weapon systems online and ready, Yun Taiho reported from his station. The old railguns are charging properly, missile tubes loaded. The plasma cannon took some work, but Soman got it running. Engineer Choi Soman looked up from her console, oil stains on her uniform. The fusion core is running hot but stable. We have enough power for extended combat operations. The armor plating is showing its age, but it'll hold. Dongwu nodded. The Retribution was old, but she had been built during humanity's war years when every ship needed to punch above its weight. She might be outnumbered, but she wasn't outclassed. What? Do we know about the enemy? He asked. Intelligence Officer Jung Minseo pulled up a holographic display showing the Vortak fleet. 12 heavy cruisers in standard formation around the planet. 4 assault carriers deploying ground forces. The fleet commander is Nexus Prime Korthak, experienced but traditional in his tactics. Traditional how? He follows standard Imperial doctrine. Overwhelming firepower, direct assault, maximum intimidation. The Vorthak believe that showing superior force makes enemies surrender without fighting. Dongwu studied the display. The alien ships were arranged in a perfect sphere around Kepler 442b, their weapons pointed down at the planet's surface. It was an impressive show of force designed to terrorize anyone watching. They're not expecting resistance, he observed. No, sir. According to their communications, they consider this a simple cleansing operation. The colonists are listed as primitive farmers with no military capability. Medical Officer Han Nayung looked up from her station. I've been monitoring the planet's emergency frequencies. The colonists are still alive, but barely. Some made it to caves in the northern mountains. The Vorthak are hunting them systematically. Dongwu felt that familiar cold anger building in his chest. During the Terran War, he had seen what happened when humans were backed into corners with no way out. It never ended well for the other side. Sir, Minseo continued, I've been analyzing galactic communication networks. Word of our departure has reached some interesting parties. She brought up another display showing message intercepts from across known space. Dongwu read through them with growing understanding. Alert to all Galactic Council forces. Human vessel has departed Sol System Quarantine Zone. Destination unknown. Advise extreme caution. Emergency session called by Galactic Council. Topic: possible human military action. All member species requested to attend. Vorthak High Command to Nexus Prime. Korthak. Intelligence reports possible human interference. Disregard. Humans are extinct or irrelevant. Dongwu smiled at that last one. Extinct or irrelevant, that's what they tell themselves. Captain, Taiho said, I've been studying human military history from the war years. The tactics our people used back then, they weren't just effective, they were terrifying. How so? Other species fight to win territory or resources. Humans fight to win completely. We don't just defeat enemies, we break their will to fight. The psychological warfare files are intense. Dongwu knew what Taiho meant. During the Terran War, human forces had gained a reputation for never giving up, never surrendering, and turning any situation into a weapon. They fought with tools, furniture, broken glass, anything that could hurt an enemy. When trapped, they became more dangerous, not less. The galaxy learned to fear us, he said quietly. Not because we were stronger or had better technology, because we refused to lose. And now they think we're gone, Somin added. They've gotten comfortable, soft. The ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Immediately, the Vorthak fleet's sensors locked onto them. Dongwu watched as 12 alien warships began turning in their direction. "Incoming transmission," Nayoung reported. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was deep and harsh, speaking in broken human language. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Vorthak Imperial space. Identify yourself or be destroyed." Dongwu picked up the communication device. "This is Captain Lee Dongwu of the United Earth Ship Retribution. You are ordered to cease all military operations against human civilians and withdraw from this system immediately." Silence stretched across space for several seconds. Then, harsh alien laughter filled the bridge. "Human? Impossible. Humans are extinct, even if they were not. One small ship against our fleet? You must be insane. I'll give you one more chance," Dongwu said calmly. "Withdraw now, or face the consequences." More laughter. "We are Nexus Prime Korthak of the Vorthak Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. We do not fear the ghosts of dead species. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Dongwu closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. "Well, we tried diplomacy, battle stations." Red lights began flashing throughout the ship as the Retribution prepared for combat. Weapon systems that had slept for decades hummed to life. In the depths of the vessel, automated systems began loading ammunition and charging power cores. "Sir," Minseo said, reading alien communications, "Nexus Prime Korthak is ordering his fleet to destroy us. He's treating this as a minor annoyance." "Good," Dongwu replied. "Overconfidence is a weakness we can exploit." "Captain?" Taiho asked. "What's our strategy? We're outnumbered 12-1. Dongwu looked at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. They were arranged in their perfect formation, following their traditional doctrine. Predictable. Vulnerable. "The Vorthak fight like they're still in the old galaxy," he said, "where wars were civilized and enemies followed rules. They're about to learn that humans never believed in fighting fair." On the planet below, Park Min-ho sat in his underground bunker, listening to the emergency radio. The weak signal carried fragments of conversation between the ships above. "Did you hear that?" Kim Ji-woo whispered. "Someone answered our distress call." "One ship against the entire Vorthak fleet," Min-ho replied sadly. "It's brave, but—" His words trailed off as new sounds came through the radio. Not the formal communications of military fleets, but something else. Electronic interference, jamming signals, the sound of systems being hacked and disrupted. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, the Retribution was doing what human ships did best. Not fighting fair, not following rules, but adapting, improvising, and turning every weakness into a weapon. The Vorthak were about to remember why their ancestors had begged humanity to stay away from the galaxy. The first thing Nexus Prime Korthak noticed was that the human ship wasn't where it was supposed to be. His tactical display showed the small vessel had been approaching on a direct course, exactly as expected. Then, in the space between one sensor sweep and the next, it simply vanished. "Where did it go?" he demanded from his command center aboard the flagship Devourer. "Unknown, Nexus Prime," his sensor operator replied. "The ship appears to have disappeared." Ships do not disappear. Find it. What Korthak didn't know was that the Retribution had done something no civilized military would attempt. Instead of approaching like a normal warship, Captain Lee Dongwu had ordered his ship to dive into the planet's gravity well at maximum speed, using the massive world to mask their approach. Coming around the planet's shadow now, Yoon Tai-ho reported from the weapons station. "Enemy flagship directly ahead, range 2,000 kilometers. All weapons, fire at will," Dongwu ordered. The Retribution's railguns spoke first, sending solid metal projectiles at incredible speed toward the Vorthak flagship. The alien shields flared as they absorbed the impact, but these weren't normal projectiles. Engineer Choi So-min had packed them with electronic warfare devices that immediately began jamming the enemy's systems. "Direct hit on their command ship," Tai-ho reported. "Their communications are down." The Vorthak fleet tried to respond, but they were arranged in their perfect formation for intimidating a planet, not fighting an enemy that appeared behind them. Half their ships couldn't fire without risking hits on their own vessels. They're trying to turn to face us, Intelligence Officer Young Minseo observed. But their formation is too rigid. They need time to reorganize. Time we won't give them, Dongwu replied. Solomon, are those mining charges ready? Ready, Captain, the engineer confirmed. The Retribution fired a spread of missiles at the nearest Vorthak cruiser. But these weren't military warheads. They were mining explosives meant for breaking apart asteroids. When they detonated against the alien ship's hull, they created massive holes that vented atmosphere and crew into space. Barbaric, Minseo said, translating panicked Vorthak communications. They're calling our tactics barbaric. Good, Dongwu replied. Fear makes them sloppy. The human ship danced between the larger alien vessels, too small and fast for their heavy weapons to track effectively. Every time the Vorthak tried to predict where the Retribution would go next, Dongwu did something unexpected. Instead of engaging the damaged cruiser, he targeted its neighbor. Instead of using conventional attack patterns, he flew his ship through the debris field of a destroyed Vorthak vessel using the wreckage as cover. Second cruiser is disabled, Taeho reported. Third is trying to retreat. Don't let it, Dongwu ordered. If word gets back to the Empire that a single human ship did this, they'll send everything they have. But the real battle was happening on the planet's surface. The moment the Vorthak fleet came under attack, their ground forces found themselves cut off from orbital support. That's when the colonists discovered they weren't as helpless as they thought. Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo had been a mining foreman before the attack. Now he crouched in the ruins of New Haven's industrial district, watching Vorthak soldiers patrol the streets. He wasn't a trained soldier, but he understood explosives. Remember, he whispered to the small group of colonists with him, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them afraid to be here. The improvised bomb was made from mining charges and fertilizer from the agricultural stores. When it detonated under a Vorthak patrol, it didn't just kill the aliens. It sent a message to every other squad in the area. The humans were fighting back. Hit and run, Kyung-soo ordered as they moved to their next position. Make noise, cause damage, then disappear. Don't give them a target to shoot at. The Vorthak forces, trained for conventional warfare against organized armies, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand still and be conquered. Every building could hide a sniper. Every street corner might conceal a bomb. The colonists turned their own farm equipment into weapons, using industrial tools in ways no military manual had ever considered. In his underground bunker, Park Min-ho listened to the chaos above through his emergency radio. The sounds of battle filled the frequencies, explosions, weapons fire, and something else. Laughter, human laughter. They're enjoying this, Kim Ji-woo said in amazement, and they were. For the first time since the attack began, the colonists were fighting back. They might die, but they would die on their feet, making the enemy pay for every meter of ground. In space, the battle was reaching its climax. The Vorthak fleet, designed to overwhelm weaker opponents through superior numbers, found themselves picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight fairly. Flagship's shields are down, Taeho reported. Main weapons offline. Good. Target their engines. I want Nexus Prime Korthak alive to send a message. The Retribution's final assault was precise and surgical. Instead of destroying the enemy flagship, Dongwu disabled it, leaving it helpless but intact. The other Vorthak ships, seeing their commander's vessel crippled, began to break formation. They're retreating, Minseo reported. 7 ships destroyed, 5 disabled, only 3 are jumping to hyperspace. Dongwu nodded. Let them go. They'll carry word of what happened here. Medical Officer Han Na-young looked up from her station. Captain, I'm reading massive casualties among the Vorthak ground forces. The colonists have been thorough. Any human casualties? Some, but far fewer than expected. Sir, these people aren't trained soldiers. How did they become so effective so quickly? Dongwu smiled grimly. Because they're human. When we're backed into a corner with our children threatened, we become something else. Something the galaxy learned to fear. On the planet below, the surviving Vorthak forces were in full retreat. Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo watched from his hiding place as alien soldiers ran toward their landing ships, abandoning equipment and wounded comrades in their haste to escape. "Should we pursue?" asked one of the colonists. "No," Kyung-soo replied. "Let them go, but make sure they see us watching. I want them to remember that humans don't forgive. We don't forget, and we never stop fighting." The message was clear to any Vorthak soldier who survived the day. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was a reminder of why their empire had once begged humanity to stay away from galactic affairs. As the last alien transport ship lifted off from New Haven, Park Min-ho emerged from his bunker to see the retribution descending through the atmosphere. The human warship looked small against the sky, but it had done what an entire Galactic Council fleet couldn't do. It had reminded the galaxy that humanity was never truly gone. They had just been sleeping, waiting for someone to threaten their children. Now they were awake again. The retribution settled onto the scarred ground of New Haven's landing pad like a bird of prey returning to its nest. Steam rose from its hull as the ship's systems cooled after the fierce battle in orbit. Captain Lee Dongwoo stood on the bridge, watching the colonists emerge from their hiding places. "Damage report," he ordered. "Hull integrity at 80%, Engineer Choi So-man replied. "Main weapons operational. We took some hits, but nothing critical." The old girl held together. "Casualties?" Medical Officer Han Na-young looked up from her console. "Minor injuries only. The Vorthak never managed to land a solid hit on us." Dongwoo nodded. That was the advantage of human tactics. Confusion and unpredictability kept the enemy off balance. But he knew this victory came with a price that hadn't been paid yet. "Sir," Intelligence Officer Young Min-seo called from her station. "I'm monitoring galactic communications. Word of our engagement is spreading fast. What's the reaction?" "Mixed. The Galactic Council is calling emergency sessions. Some species are demanding immediate action against Earth. Others are afraid." Dongwoo walked to the main display and pulled up the communication logs. Messages were flooding in from across the galaxy and the tone was unmistakable. Fear. "Emergency alert to all shipping. Sol system quarantine zone is now considered actively hostile. No vessels should approach human space under any circumstances. Vorthak High Command to all fleet commanders. Humans are not extinct. Previous intelligence was incorrect. Recommend immediate defensive posture." This is insane. One ship destroyed an entire Vorthak battle group. How is that possible? But the message that caught Dongwoo's attention came from an unexpected source. It was a transmission from the disabled Vorthak flagship, still drifting in orbit above them. "Human Captain," came the harsh voice of Nexus Prime Korthak. "I request communication." "Put him through," Dongwoo ordered. The alien commander's image appeared on the main screen. His armor was cracked and green blood stained his face, but his eyes held something Dongwoo recognized, respect born of fear. "I am Nexus Prime Korthak of the Vorthak Empire," the alien said formally. "I have commanded fleets for 30 years. I have conquered 17 worlds. Never have I faced an enemy like you." "Then you should have listened when I told you to withdraw," Dongwoo replied. "Your tactics, they are not civilized. You fight like wild animals, you use improvised weapons. You target support systems instead of engaging honorably. You show no mercy to defeated foes." "No," Dongwoo said quietly. "We fight like humans." Korthak was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of understanding. "The stories are true then. The legends our ancestors told. Humans do not simply wage war. You become war itself. Only when you threaten our children. I must ask, are there more of you? More ships like yours?" Dongwoo smiled, and the expression was not reassuring. "What do you think?" The truth was complex. The Retribution was one of only a handful of active human military vessels. Most of humanity had chosen peaceful isolation after the Terran War. But Korthak didn't need to know that. "I see," the Vorthak commander said. "Then I must warn my empire. The humans are not extinct. They are simply sleeping. Make sure that warning includes this, Dongwu said. We stayed away because the galaxy asked us to. We kept our word. If you keep yours and leave human colonies alone, we'll go back to sleep. But if you wake us again, he let the threat hang in the air. Korthak nodded slowly. Understood. Human. Captain, but I must ask, what of my ship, my crew? You'll be given enough power to reach the nearest Vorthak base. Your weapons will remain disabled. Consider it a mercy. Mercy from humans, Korthak mused. Another legend proves true. The communication ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the hum of ship systems. Dongwu knew this moment would echo across the galaxy for years to come. Today, a single human ship had defeated a Vorthak battle fleet. Tomorrow, every species in known space would be recalculating their relationship with Earth. Captain, weapons. Specialist Yun Taiho spoke up. There's something else. I've been analyzing the battle recordings. Some of our tactics today, they weren't in any manual. We improvised things that shouldn't have worked, such as using mining charges as weapons, flying through debris fields for cover, targeting communication arrays instead of weapons. It was like we instinctively knew how to turn every situation into an advantage. Han Na-young nodded thoughtfully. It's more than that. I monitored bioreadings during the battle. Your stress levels actually decreased when the fighting started. All of us became calmer, more focused. Because this is what we're built for, Dongwu said simply. Not conquest or glory, protection. When someone threatens our people, we become something else, something the galaxy learned to fear. A communication request came in from the planet's surface. Park Minho's voice filled the bridge thick with emotion. Captain Dongwu, this is Colony Administrator Park Minho. On behalf of everyone on New Haven, I want to thank you. You saved our lives, our children's lives. No thanks necessary, Dongwu replied. You're human. That's enough. Will you stay? Help us rebuild? Dongwu looked around at his crew. They all knew the answer. No, we have to go back. The isolation protocols exist for good reasons. But what if this happens again? What if other colonies are attacked? It was Minseo who answered, her voice carrying across the open channel. Then we'll come again. Humans protect humans. That's who we are. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo was organizing the cleanup effort. The Vorthak had left behind equipment, vehicles, and supplies in their hasty retreat. More importantly, they had left behind a message written in the scorch marks of battle. Look at this, called one of the colonists, pointing to graffiti spray-painted on a wall. It was in the Vorthak language, but the translation was clear. Humans were here, remember. Did we write that? Someone asked. No, Kyung-soo replied. The Vorthak soldiers did. They're marking this place as a warning to others. Similar messages were found throughout the colony. The alien soldiers, in their final moments on New Haven, had documented their defeat. Not out of spite, but out of fear that others might not believe the stories they would tell. In orbit, the Retribution prepared for departure. The ship that had arrived as humanity's last hope was leaving as something more dangerous, a reminder of what humans could become when pushed too far. Course set for the Sol system. Taiho reported. Engage, Dongwu ordered. As the ship accelerated toward the hyperspace jump point, the crew could see the message spreading across galactic communication networks. Video recordings of the battle, testimonies from surviving Vorthak soldiers, analysis from military experts who couldn't understand how a single ship had achieved such a decisive victory. But perhaps the most telling message came from an unlikely source. The Galactic Council's official response to the New Haven incident was brief and to the point. Effective immediately, all member species are reminded that the Sol system quarantine zone remains in effect. Any violation of human space or interference with human colonies will be considered an act of war against Earth. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. The galaxy had remembered why it was afraid of humanity. And more importantly, it had remembered why that fear was justified. As the Retribution jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew back to the shadows beyond the rim, the legend grew. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, humans were watching, waiting, ready to remind the galaxy that some species should never be awakened.